There are 7 days in a week and 24 hours in a day, and you do not have to send an embargo for Tuesday at 6 a.m. Pacific time.
Did you hear about the time a comedian made a joke about organic reach on Facebook? Nobody got it. Hello and welcome to Mobile Heroes Uncensored number 9. My name is Jon Hook here and my co-host is Peggy Ensalz. Today we have a super awesome show. I know we always say that, but today it really is because we bring in GamesBeat's Dean Takahashi and PocketGamer's Dave Bradley. Super interesting, super amazing people. And we pair them with two mobile marketers, Rose Agozzino from Ludia Games and Jon Hook from BoomHits or BoomHit or Hit Boom or something like that. And with them, we make a game, we chat about the business of gaming, and Peggy and I play games with our guests, of course. Welcome to the show. You know, Peggy, I've got a joke for you today.
Oh, is this like what the real thing, or this
This is
just
the real
fun?
thing. You're
Okay.
always ready, right? I mean,
I'm
that's the
always ready.
motto.
I'm
That's
I'm
the
always
podcaster, vidcaster's motto, always ready.
yeah.
So my teenage son, he's kind of into medieval stuff, recreation, that sort of thing,
Ooh.
making things. So last week we built a catapult. We tested in the backyard. My wife couldn't believe it. She said, "Wow, I never thought our son could go that far." I said, "It is pretty amazing. Let's go get our daughter." It's pretty cheesy. I know it's a
It
dad
is
joke,
cheesy,
but
but I liked it
hey.
'cause I was like, I didn't know I could get that. I'm like, yeah. Seeing that thing
Ex-
out of Monty Python and the Holy Grail here.
You got it. You got it. We are the new Monty Python, Peggy. It's
Oh,
pretty amazing. I have one for you.
oh,
Usually
the
I'm the butt of.
coconuts and the one with the they do the sheep and the cows. Okay, you're on.
Yes, yes. I have one for you. Usually I am the butt of my own jokes, and that is entirely appropriate, right? I mean, I should be the butt of my own jokes, but I have one for you, so get
All right.
ready.
All right.
Peggy, do you know why people call you the computer?
No, and I can't believe they do.
Well, it's not your math skills. Um,
Hell no, not on my SATs, no way.
no, no, but apparently you go to sleep when you're unattended for 15 minutes. But hey, you know what? I feel like I did my duty. I feel like I held up my end of the bargain. I had jokes. Now it's time for you to hold up your end of the bargain. Peggy, do we have some news to share today?
Boy, do we ever. I think you call these thought grenades. We'll call these news grenades, John. It's just
I
like
know.
boom,
I
boom.
know. I know.
Who would have thought it, you know? Android apps on Windows.
Yeah, I call it a BFD, a big freaking deal. I mean, it's Android apps on
Mm.
Microsoft's operating system using Amazon's App Store. I mean, like, this is three of big tech right here, three of the five, right? I mean, where's
Mhm.
Apple? You've got Google, Microsoft, Amazon. That's kind of insane. I mean, I guess it's a very 2021 thing because this is an insane year. But it's interesting because Microsoft needed a counter to Apple's M1 and iOS apps running on Macs. That brings
Yeah.
millions of bits of new functionality to Mac OS 10. And of course, Microsoft doesn't view Google and Amazon as the enemy of all enemies. They clash in cloud, a bunch of other places, but otherwise they have fairly well-defined separate spheres of influence. But it's interesting because marketing measurement is changing. What an app install means is changing. Where an app lives, how somebody uses it, how they
Yeah.
interact with it, engage with it. Really, really weird stuff. Interesting, cool stuff. Monetization is changing too. Microsoft will charge $0 and take 0% of payments, which means that by giving away what it never had, it puts Apple in a tougher competitive position. So we live in interesting times, Peggy.
Absolutely. It brings me back, actually. I studied political science, amongst other things, John. And I remember the whole idea was peace on earth. World peace will break out when we have a common enemy. It was like, well, this is great. All we need is Martians. No, all we need is Apple. So here we go.
Apple from Mars. If Apple's from Mars, where's Google? Venus?
Exactly. It just makes you wonder. And the constellations are going to get wild, right?
Oh,
I'm
wow.
just waiting for someone to, like, bring in some, I don't know, TikTok. There's got to be some sort of global thing going on here. That'll really upset Apple, by the way.
New
But
podcast, The Astrology of Mobile. Here we go.
exactly. The rising stars and the ones that burn out. Won't go there. Not us, not in this heat, never.
No.
And of course, more news that's also exciting because you could see it in the stars. You could see it coming, right? You could indeed.
Nicely
Pun
done.
intended.
Nicely done.
You could see it. Third cookie depreciation got delayed to 2023. Someone out there cares, maybe.
Yeah, third-party cookies. Wow. I think Google
Yeah.
learned that it's not as powerful as Apple. Apple owns and controls its operating system, and the open ecosystems like the web, they're just not as easy to upend by decree. And of course, there was a lot of pushback to Flock. A lot of people got in line with it, but a lot of people pushed back. And those types of systems that significantly advantage one incumbent player, i.e. Google, don't always get received with open arms. What a shock. Also, I mean, SK Network was delayed as well, right? So Apple learned with SK Network that big ecosystems take a long time to change. Google's learning that as well. It's not as easy as decreeing it. And it remains to be seen what's going to happen there. It's relevant to mobile because a lot of mobile marketers are using web to app, other things like that, cross-platform journeys. But it's also relevant because what Google is learning with Flock and privacy and other things on the web, third-party cookies, it's probably going to impact what Google does with Android and the Android advertising identifier, the Google ad identifier, right? So there's a lot going on here. And again, may you live in interesting times.
Absolutely. They just got to take a little slowly because someone already is eating their lunch. So it makes no sense to eat your children, in a sense, of the ecosystem here. So just go, yeah. Google can't do this. Cannot do it. Has other problems. So it has to go slowly. And we all sort of have to coexist. Little kumbaya, but it's going to get us through.
So Peggy, who are we chatting with today?
We have got a lineup, as we always do, John. They're always interesting. Today, let me kick it off. We have Dean Takahashi, lead writer for GamesBeat, AdventureBeat. He's been a tech journalist for more than 28 years, I have here, covering games for 21. He's described, since he didn't fill out the secret tip, the one thing we don't know about you in LinkedIn, I had to do some digging. So he's been described by his colleagues as sharp, smart, and selfless. You can count on him to, quote, be the one in the room asking the toughest questions. But today, Dean,
do you know his nickname?
No, it wasn't in LinkedIn, no.
It wasn't in LinkedIn. Come on, Dean. It's Dean the Machine, because nobody in tech has more 10-story days than Dean. I'd be willing to put money on that. I'd put Ethereum on that. But yes.
Well, if you're the one asking the toughest questions, Dean, you're going to be on the receiving end today. So strap yourself in for a ride with us.
All right.
And of course, you can also say and wave and all of that when I mention you, so we know who we're talking to. Dave Bradley.
Hi.
Yes, indeed. Chief Operation Officer at Steel Media, perhaps best known as the publisher of PocketGamer. Another veteran here, John, 25 years experience in entertainment media.
And still writing. Well, not daily, but still writing, I saw, which I love.
Occasionally.
Yeah. And he's not just a gaming expert, right? He is a die-hard sci-fi fan, big time, right?
Oh, yeah.
From magazines to a sci-fi podcast. He has started one, as most of us did in lockdown. And he's so passionate about sci-fi that he's gearing up to launch beyondgames.biz. So look for that one. The convergence of games with comics, film, music, cool stuff. The one to watch, John.
Wow. Dave, favorite sci-fi author?
Ian
Probably.
Ian M. Banks, I should say, with the M in the middle. Ian Banks, yeah, for sure.
Amazing. Hard science, but
Wow.
incredible where he takes it. I agree.
Yeah, huge fan of Ian M. Banks' work. And of course, unfortunately, sadly, no longer with us. But I did get a chance to meet and interview him a few times over the years. So, yeah, I'm very happy about that. Got a chance to talk through his sci-fi with him, yeah.
Nice.
How cool. How cool. And we have Rose Agozzino. Rose, marketing manager at Ludia, located in Montreal, Canada. So a little close to you, John. She's worked at all the titles, including Jurassic franchise. So marketing is what she is amazing at. She's been recognized as a mobile hero for her expertise. And she used the reset to settle down, buy a house. And while we're on the topic of her private life, she did fill in her private secret. When she was a kid, she wanted to be a stunt car driver.
Oh.
Still at the top of my list of things I'd like to do.
Wow.
I got to one time I got to do like the closed tracks, you know, where they film all the commercials and the car going halfway up the wall. And I was like, can I do that? And they're just like, no.
Whenever we have somebody that is also in Canada, Peggy says, "Hey, close to you, John." And pretty soon, you know, when we interview somebody in Russia, I'm going to say, "Hey, close to you, Peggy, in Berlin." I mean, you know, it's like Canada is a large country, Peggy. I know you're American by birth, but you're European now. You should know some geography.
It's just Canada. It's up there. It's north of us, man.
Yes.
I had in my notes Fast and Furious, but I thought, no, that's another franchise, Rose.
Another franchise, not ours.
No. And Jon Hook. Jon, CEO at BoomHits, a BoomBit company group. So it's part of that. Gaming exec, entrepreneur, experienced in launching, building, running mobile games studios, absolutely in his element there. But he has agency days he looks back on fondly because in his agency days, he did charity boxing match and knocked out a client. Out.
There's big money in charity boxing these days. I mean, you should talk to some influencers about that, John.
Yeah, I went too early before all of these days in Vegas and these multi-million-dollar contracts. I've missed my peak.
Story of my life. I peaked too soon. I mean, if I were you, I wouldn't know. Am I BoomHits, BoomBit? Sheesh, it's a tongue twister.
I know. Tell me about it. And I work there. Imagine the field day our lawyers have.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Peggy, for the intros, and thank you, everybody, for being here. We are here to, you know what, learn a few things, share a few things, have a few laughs. We are talking games and games marketing. We have 2 games journalists. We have 2 games marketers, and we'll probably play a few games as well, at least on them, right, Peggy? So here we go. Dean, let's start with you. What's the best pitch you ever got to review a game?
I think I would go with the pitch for Hellblade, and it took place at one of those pre-E3 events where they bring in like a few dozen journalists ahead of the E3 show, and we get to see a bunch of games. And this game was at a reception on a windy roof in Santa Monica, and there were a bunch of indie games, you know, being displayed. And I went over to talk to the Hellblade guy, a guy named Dominic Matthews, and he was talking about the design of the game. And, you know, that the whole story he told just sort of drew me in. It was like a female Celtic warrior who did not look at all like, you know, some kind of warrior princess or whatever, right? She just kind of looked like a fairly normal short-haired woman who had just normal proportions. And you know, it's like you don't see that in the video game industry every day, especially, you know, even 4 years ago, right, when I saw it. And so I thought the character design was interesting. And then the theme was all about mental health, right? And you know, she was suffering from psychosis, and so they said that, well, we consulted with some psychosis experts for the game, and they even got a grant from one of the UK insurance companies to do this game. And so it was the initial funding for it came from that direction. But they were, they were pretty much AAA developers, right? The folks who did like the DMC games, for example. And so, but they wanted their control over this, and they had a team of 30 or so people. It was still a fairly big budget, but not something that was, EA level, right? And I covered this story at the outset and over time, and it became my favorite game of 2017, right? And I thought it was so well executed as far as they used the Unreal Engine for facial animation to just sort of really cross that uncanny valley for the first time. And they had this theme of a journey into the Norse underworld that she takes in order to find her lost love. And the whole time you don't know whether or not it's all in her head, right? Mm-hmm. And then you go on, fight these demons, and it's like an analogy for just fighting your own personal demons in your head. And they execute on that sort of part of the gameplay so well that was amazing. So this is a pitch to me that just sold itself, right? I mean, You start with an outstanding game, and you think about all these things that you want to do, like the tropes about women, get rid of those, and the tropes about psychos in video games as the villains all of the time, and some of the truth about psychosis. Then you just get to an amazing story and just great execution. So I think that's the best pitch I've ever seen.
Love it. The unexpected. I would have expected something like Hellblade, play our game, you'll go to heaven, or something like that. But what's changing, Dean, about the games that you're seeing over the last few years?
Well, I think, during the pandemic, we just saw this amazing growth in the game industry. And even now, we're seeing mobile user growth growing at 30% and revenues growing at 40% in the last quarter. And so this whole mainstream adoption of games has happened, and it's happening still, and it's getting accelerated by the pandemic conditions. And so, I feel like the mainstream has come to games as opposed to the games always trying to seek out some kind of mainstream attention. So it's part of culture, right? And if you don't know about them, then you miss that. You're kind of missing out. It's like not knowing about comic books, right? So,
oops, big gap.
What's kind of interesting, though, John, is that I'm reading also that these newcomer gamers don't call themselves gamers, right? They don't say they're playing games. They don't identify themselves as gamers. It's like, no, I'm not one of them. But that's the mainstream. There you go.
Gamers who don't game, gamers who
not gaming.
Dave, let's turn to you. You're management, but you still write, which I'm super happy to see because I can't not write. It's just in my bones. I saw that your latest post is about an upcoming chess game from Supercell, and I kind of like chess game, and I was like, what was the first thing you thought when you heard chess and Supercell?
Well, let me kind of dive into that a little bit. Actually, it's kind of, this is Clash Mini. That's one of the 3 games that Supercell announced. Actually, it's auto chess, which is kind of a specific kind of genre, actually, which is, you say chess and it kind of brings to mind a certain type of game. But actually, auto chess is kind of shorthand for a particular kind of turn-based game that started out as a mod of a modification of Dota, one of the mobile online battle arena games. And auto chess is kind of a form that a kind of genre of game that started a couple of years back, where you set your pieces up and they play according to set moves, and that's the chess kind of component to it. But it's kind of geeky and kind of deep. And what's interesting about this is, and what I love about Supercell, is they take these kind of quite deep genres and make them really accessible, make them really snackable, and they bring them to the mainstream. And that was true of Clash Royale, which I just think is a perfect game, by the way. I'm a huge fan of Clash Royale. I play it to death. I've dropped money on that game. And the thing about what they did with that is they took this kind of player versus player battle arena style game, and they shrunk it down to its core components, and they made it kind of colorful and fun, and they made it really easy, even if you've never played a game before, to just drop your pieces on there and play that game. And they're doing it again, and that's what I thought when I first saw this, and that's what I love about it. They announced 3 games coming out using the Clash brand, so using the Clash characters, but taking in each case a different genre. And the one that just appealed to me was this Supercell take on the auto chess genre. And I thought, well, I can't wait to see that. I can't wait to see what they do with that in Clash Mini, what they did with Clash Royale, taking on those type of games, the battle arena games. So that's what I was excited about. And yeah, you're right. I'm part of the leadership team at Steel Media, but I'm a journalist, in my bones. Like you say, I can't not write. I love to do it. And when I see something I'm excited about, I want to dive into it. And that's why I kind of got into this business in the first place. I started out writing about games in the 90s, and I'm just one of those people. And I think Dean may be the same. There's something that you're interested in. You're interested in the games. You're interested in the soap opera of the industry, and you just want to kind of dive into that and then evangelize that to other people and kind of explore that a little bit and share your findings. And so, yeah, there just sometimes things pop up that I just got to write about.
Peggy, it's pretty funny. If you want to be interested, talk to somebody who's passionate. We've had just really great answers from Dave and from Dean right now.
Yeah, I want to play
diving into the psychology and the sociology and the backstory and the history behind games, and it's wonderful. I absolutely love it. Dave, how has the business of games evolved over the last couple of years? Dean just talked about pandemic. That's obviously had a huge impact. What else is happening?
Yeah, well, the impact of the pandemic, can't be overstated. There's so many things. I could dive into so many kind of angles here. There's lots of sort of trends. I'm going to pick one that's particularly of interest to me. And Peggy mentioned at the top of this conversation about how I'm kind of working on this beyond games idea. I know it's something that VentureBeat and GamesBeat have dived into as well. This idea of the metaverse, I'm fascinated with that. And, we could talk about lots of things that's going on with games at the moment and kind of trends and hyper casual stuff. But this is something. The metaverse is something that I think is fascinating, and I think it's going to become part of our lives. And we were just talking about how the mainstream is there, pop culture, the crossovers. We're seeing situations now where, well, let me give you an example. I went to see the last Star Wars movie that came out, right? The final part of that trilogy. And at the beginning of that, you get the text crawl on screen, the famous introductory crawl. And at the start of that, it says, "The dead speak." And it introduces the return of the Emperor. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, I'm sure everyone has by now, right? So Emperor Palpatine is back. Now, that broadcast to the galaxy took place inside Fortnite. So Fortnite is part of the Star Wars story, right? And that says to me that there's a future where games are more than just a one-off brief experience. They're platforms, they're places, they're social places where these stories take place. And, we see also during the pandemic as well, concerts taking place in Roblox because people can't go to stadiums. So they watch Lil Nas X, perform inside Roblox or Marshmello, performing in Fortnite is another example there. But there's loads of these. And so I am very keen to see the journey that we're on towards the Matrix that starts with games that are super popular right now becoming places where all these different aspects of culture interact.
Wow, impressive. Ready Player One, we live inside the game.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Now let's turn to the game marketers, and Rose, we'll start with you. You hear through the grapevine that Dean or Dave is reviewing your game. What goes through your mind?
So usually a slight panic, like, do they have the right version of the game? Is everything, make sure the servers are ready, and, hopefully there's nothing breaking that day, or we're not in maintenance because we're in the process of updating, and that would be like a terrible experience if you're going to write about the game and suddenly, sorry, we're down for maintenance because we have the new version coming out. But then, and it's happened before, so that's why it's always like, okay, let's make sure we're always ready to go. But there's usually like a really, really big excitement about it because this does carry a lot of weight. I think it's very important, and that it's often overlooked. I think when we look at other types of media where maybe reviewers, when you look at movies, sometimes, the Rotten Tomatoes score will be really great, but then the critic score is really low. And, who's coming in at that point? And in the end, it's the consumer who's always going to win because they're the ones that are in the end directing where they're putting their money. So, but I think when it comes to games, we don't have that as much of that disconnect. So when someone like Dean or someone like Dave and their teams want to talk about a game, we know that it's going to hit a very large audience who are going to be greatly influenced. So it's always great when we get to see, when we hear it, we're like, oh, we have this coming out, and we just get really excited because we know it should hopefully bode well for us.
Well, I want to follow up with that a little bit because we're in an era, getting in an era of tougher growth via advertising, right? Especially iOS, less data, more privacy, that sort of thing. Is getting good press and good reviews even more important now?
Totally. I think it's definitely important and growing in importance as well. So having press coverage versus being, hey, you know what, we know your interests, we're going to target you with an ad. It's really letting the game sell itself. It's letting people highlight what are the best elements of the game and hopefully speaking to an audience that are going to like it. And I don't know about you, but when I discover something due to a review, I get really excited. I share it with all my friends. If I see it in an ad, I might get really excited, but I might not want to tell everyone about it as much as I would if I personally discovered something. So I think that
Hey,
goes
all my
very
friends, I
well.
saw an ad.
Mhm.
And it was
Exactly,
amazing.
But I think when it comes to review, you just kind of like want to share, like, I found this really great thing and I'm going to share it with everyone. And then you start having those little viral moments. So I think
Nice.
it's definitely going to keep growing importance as you mentioned, as the privacy comes up.
Yeah. John, last but not least, super happy to have you with us as well. What's the most significant impact you've ever seen from a story in the press about a game you've worked on, good or bad?
I mean, I'd echo what Rose is saying. Is what I see from the business side that, again, you don't get in other industries is the influence that Dean and Dave can have on our share price. So what I mean by that, I'm not going down this Reddit rabbit hole here where we're gonna start manipulating gaming stocks. But what I mean by that is, obviously the world, particularly we're in now, is incredibly exciting, right? And I think Dave and Dean most really made the same point, that there's this blurred line between gaming and culture, and as a result, you're having all these new funds pouring into gaming because they realize that's really where consumers and a lot of money is to be made, whilst other markets disappear. So what we've seen in certainly the past 12 months now is a significant uplift in investors and analysts following our share price. And we had a game that hit #1 on the US App Store, and it got picked up by a few journalists, and also I agree with Peggy that a few creators. So these people that they're not gamers, but they create great content, and it had a significant impact on our share price. All these alerts were going off. We were kind of scrambling, trying to figure out what had happened, and it was because it was from a very positive review of the game, and then the investors thinking that, you know, #1 in the charts relates to this huge amount of revenue and profit that immediately pours into the company. So therefore our market cap goes up 20-30%. So from business side, I find this fascinating, because you read about it in other industries, but I've been going through that in real time. So there's clearly the influence that, you know, consumers have going to these reviews and wanting to know really detailed reviews and the kind of top games to look at. But there's no doubt, though, that, you know, I'm sure Dave and Dean have had this conversation many times, in terms of their audience is also, you know, the business of games, you know, investors, analysts now that are looking to learn not just about the business of games, but they want to learn under the bonnet. They want to understand the mechanics of these games and the trends, and therefore which companies they should follow and potentially invest in. So yeah, it's been a fascinating 12 months for me to see this impact on our business.
That's amazing, John. And I have a follow-up question for you, but I want to take what you said and I want to ask Dave and Dean their thoughts on it, because I've had that when I was writing at VentureBeat as well. I was writing, it was a B2B story, and I wrote, it was a cool technology. And they called me up like the next day, and they said, you know, we have a bell in our office that starts ringing when somebody asks for a demo request, right? And it started ringing. And we're going like, what happened? And it started ringing, and it was ringing. They had to shut it off, because, you know, something happened. The magic pixie dust of the internet went, and that story spread around, and they were getting bombarded, literally thousands of requests for demos and everything like that. Dave, Dean, do you guys sense the power that you have when you write a review of a game that John's talking about that can change the course of a company's history, of its stock price, of its valuation, of how it rewards its employees, all that stuff?
Well, I am very gratified that that's the conclusion that we've reached in this call as someone who works in the press, because you know, we live in an era where there's also, you know, a great deal of effort and money goes into performance marketing, and user acquisition is an art in itself, which I really admire. And there are so many ways to influence it. And I've always been a big believer in the power of the press. And you know what? Something that, just to speak to something that Rose said as well, I think that a great review is itself a great piece of content, and it is read and enjoyed for itself, and that's, I think, part of its power as well. You know, I think that's why it connects with its audience. So I'm really pleased that you think that's, you know, that's the case. So, you know, I've always been an advocate for the power of media. You know, it kind of speaks to an authority, I think, that that someone who's played a lot of games is putting a game in context, and the fact that Dean, for instance, is a fan of something is worth 1,000 people, you know, on Metacritic or something. So I think that, you know, that's fascinating. And I also think that that when you look at well, kind of something that we do at Pocket Gamer, the top 50, you know, we do an annual top 50 of mobile game makers, and it's always really fascinating how important that is to developers to be in something like that. And I think what that speaks to is that it's appreciated that experts are poring over this and putting something in it, you know, together in a kind of hierarchy, and putting some things together. And so, yeah, I get a little bit of a sense when we do something like that, when we do a feature like that, how important it is. I mean, Dean, is it the same for you? You must have people all the time trying to get in touch with you to you know, to get coverage on your site because of the way that your name carries.
Dean's inbox is a nuclear wasteland.
I think I have 1 million unread emails or something. But,
wow.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate the power of the press, and I'm glad that people still recognize it, because you know, the power of the influencers as paid advertising has skyrocketed, you know, in the last few years, and streamers and all that. And so it feels like the power of the press has diminished in some way. But I still believe that, you know, I think it's a bit dangerous to always live inside of bubbles and not to see things from a full perspective, or to see things from outside of a bubble. And so if you're doing, you know, paid advertising with influencers, I mean, there are people inside your bubble, right? And they're not going to stray too far from what the advertising view is, or what, you know, the advertising dollars will pay for. And so I like the fact that the press is just outside of that, and that you know, we can be an independent third party that can, you know, sort of lend that authentic view that you know, we like or we don't like what we see, you know, just based on our judgment. And so so I think it's good to be, you know, for the press to be outside of that bubble. I mean, there's a line there, and it's you know, sometimes blurry line, but clear enough. And I think that you know, if you don't have that, you run so many risks of sort of having blind spots to what reality really is. And so if the press is sort of validating or criticizing your work, then it's a big signal about what's beyond us in the mainstream market of people, I think, right? So
that makes sense.
Listen, if I could just sort of add something to that as well, I think that's a really interesting point Dean makes about the kind of the authenticity and the authority that you bring. It's an interesting thing about game reviews, where once upon a time, particularly in the world of kind of premium games, you might read a game review because it would reduce the risk that you had as a gamer, right? You're going to drop £50 on a game, you'd read a review to see whether that was worth it. But in the mobile market particularly, what's interesting is, of course, many games are free. There's a big premium one, not good, but even premium games are not as expensive as console games. So is there still value in reading a review to save you money. And I think that that's not the case now. I think what you do is you read a review to save you time. And I think that's where we come in. Well, actually, what happens is you can be bombarded by advertising on Facebook. And actually what happens is you go, well, which of these games is worth my time? And so time is the currency now rather than the risk being about money. And so I think that's where game journalism comes in right now.
That makes a ton of sense. John, to come back to you, you've had games featured on Google Play in the App Store that drove 3 millions of installs in a month. Does press drive that at all, or does that drive press?
Oh, it's a bit like chicken and egg, isn't it? I mean, look, I think, of course, having your games featured is still of huge value. I mean, the kind of main page features, are probably worth millions, and there's a lot of hard work that goes on behind the scenes to, maintain, build those developer relations and have really close and sort of giving previews of the game, to Apple or Google that then perhaps by default, may damage your chances of getting, a review alongside because you've kind of given a really interesting early exclusive to someone else. But, of course, I mean, it's a bit like what Dave was saying is if the way I think about the App Store, I completely think about time, right? It's a bit like going on to Netflix. Where on earth do you start? So that's clearly the advantage of having that homepage. But again, in terms of the press, it really depends on the type of game that we've got. So if we've just got an ad-based free-to-play game, where does it make sense to invest our time? Well, if it's a sort of low-end mobile game, we're really unlikely. If it's a hyper-casual game, we're really unlikely to get a feature, right? And then when I think about would I even bother Dave or team with a hyper-casual game launch, probably not. So in that route, it's your classic performance marketing, but increasingly now influencer marketing. Where we've got, say, maybe a more interesting mid-core title that we spent 2-3 years developing on, and there's a really nice sort of indie game dev story behind it, and there's just beautiful content. I think in that scenario, then absolutely. I mean, of course, in the dream world, you're going to want both. But for me, I think for those games, I think it's really the press drives that much bigger volume. I love Dean's idea of concept about this bubble, and I often talk about with my UA team about this, how to think about performance marketing in terms of, absolutely there are these bubbles that really don't have an impact somewhere else because those people are just loyal to that influencer or, maybe a specific channel or topic. So I think generally they are, they are linked. We've had great press coverage, not in terms of a review, but again, I think if Apple or Google pick your game and you've got a main feature, it certainly does get some people's attention. But yeah, there's a really interesting kind of dynamic behind there. But every time it's a simple question about what game is it, where how do we launch this, who do we need to have relationships with, and we go from there.
Interesting. I'm still thinking about Dean's million unread messages. When I left VentureBeat, it was 20,000 that I had unread. A million. We need a screenshot of that, Dean.
We're all getting the inbox anxiety, right? That's the
We definitely need a screenshot of that. We need some proof of that.
I was just thinking about all the broken hearts in there, all these indies. He didn't answer my email.
Well, I think
people are watching this saying, "Oh shit! I hope mine isn't in that stack."
Well, I'm like perpetuating the problem too, because I said, well, if I missed the first email, just send me another one or another one. And it's like, oh, that's why I have so many emails.
Exactly. But that was a great segue, Peggy. I don't know if you knew that or not, but that was a great segue about the hearts thing, because, we always play a few games here on Mobile Heroes Uncensored. All work and no play makes for very boring gamers and bored gamers. And that's not okay. So the game we're playing today is the dating game. And here you need to set up people with a fictional gaming character. It's going to be a blind date, but you will secretly record it, of course, and live stream it. And we want you to set somebody up with your favorite fictional gaming character and then tell us why. And so, Dave, you are up first, and you've got to set up Dean. Who should Dean date and why?
Oh, wow. Okay, that's interesting. I'm trying to just think here about who my favorite gaming characters is, and I think maybe I should choose something mobile, but that would kind of
that's totally fine.
Do you know what? I'm not. I'm going to go in there, and I'm going to say, Dean, you should go on a date with Miles Morales, Spider-Man from the Spider-Man franchise on PlayStation, and you should do that because that would be the best time out in New York, right? I think you would that would be a day worth of seeing the hotspots of that city from a crazy angle. So I don't know how you feel about that, but and I also realized that's a transmedia character right there to speak to something I was saying before, but I thought that was one of my favorite games of the PlayStation 4 era, and of course now on PlayStation 5 as well. And every time I play that game, I get a sense of joy of exploration. So I'm going to set Dean up with a chance for the best day out in New York ever.
Wonderful.
Well, Miles lives in the most colorful version of New York that I've ever seen. So.
I love it. Dean, you've got to return the favor. Who should Dave date and why?
How about a sort of slimmed down, reproportioned, rebooted Lara Croft, who I thought was very interesting because, it was sort of a recognition that what people liked about her wasn't these, giant round things or whatever, but the sort of powerful character that the person represented, and someone who in formative years, went through all kinds of hardships and emerged out of that as this very strong adventurer. So
love it,
Lara Croft.
love it. And it'd be interesting to see what they do with that character in games, given the most recent Lara Croft, right, which is Alicia Vikander, and a totally different personality and body type, frankly, than previous movies. Excellent stuff. So Rose, you're up. You're on the hot seat. You've got to find somebody for John for his dream date. Who is it and why?
I mean, Mass Effect is still one of my favorite series. So, are you okay with a Commander Shepard, John?
I'll go out for dinner with anyone. I'm really open.
I mean, Commander Shepard has probably, it's one of my favorite storylines. I think it's just such a good trilogy, and I know that there are sequels that have come out since, but I think the trilogy still 10 years later just stands alone, and it's just, I think the character development that Shepard goes through, I think with everything that you're going with BoomBit and through the, just growing the company, I think Shepard would be a great person to connect with and, bring along on the adventure.
I was going to go with Princess Peach, but hey.
There was almost Zelda, maybe, but I think Shepard can kind of guide through.
And you get to choose femship or male ship.
Exactly. You can do femship.
Awesome. John, your turn. Who are you fixing Rose up? Who is perfect for her?
So I'm a huge Nintendo fan, and I would set you up with Luigi because I think he's really misunderstood. He's always in the shadows. I mean, you're going to get great Italian food to start with, right? So that's the most important thing. When you go out, you want great food. So you're going to get some lovely pasta. But I don't know. I've always gravitated to the kind of like forlorn hero in games, right? That emotional connection rather than the kind of main hero. And in every kind of like Nintendo Mario, it's all about Mario or even like Donkey Kong or Yoshi, and then there's just like silly little Luigi just being a bit sort of slapsticky. And I just kind of feel that maybe there's more to him that we kind of really need to know. Maybe there's this deep intellectual side that Nintendo just haven't actually explored. Why couldn't he have his own spin-off series? Like, why is he always green? I don't know. Like, there's all these questions that I have for Nintendo that I just feel that have been left in the shadows. So I really would love to find out who the real Luigi is. So if Rose could help me out, that'd be great.
Done. I also think it speaks. I think Waluigi is probably like Luigi's Mansion is one of the most requested like revamps or like republishing, and they're just not doing it. And I think we could have that backstory. We could find out more about Luigi if we could just get back into the mansion.
Amazing. But John, you could also settle a very, very challenging problem in my household, which is it Mario Bros or is it Mario Brothers?
Oh, that is a good question. I would just default like Brothers, but I'm sure everyone's got a different answer.
Dave, Dean, which one? What is it?
Oh,
I always,
brothers.
yeah, brothers. Yeah, I always say that too. Yeah, I don't know. Now you've made me question my whole existence. I don't know if that's right or not, but that's what I say.
Thank you. Thank you. I win. Awesome. Okay, got to get back to work, right? Peggy is giving me side eye right now, having too much fun. Liftoff isn't going to pay us for this. So we're going to have some open questions from Peggy and myself. And for anybody who wants to take it, we'll maybe throw it in one person's direction. Rose, I'm probably going to throw this first one your direction first. What makes a game interesting today, both from the developing and the reviewing side? I mean, there's so many out there. How do you come up with an interesting game today?
It's not easy. I mean, it's very easy to launch a game and then just have like a really good first week and then fall behind in the next week's rotation. You definitely need to really identify who your market is, what they want, and does your product satisfy this market? You know, can you build that relationship with these players and can you keep it ongoing? You know, I think when we launched Jurassic World Alive in 2018, it was, you know, well, it's another Pokemon Go, and you know, I think we've done well enough that we've listened to our players and we've crafted this really strong live ops to make it interesting, to make them want to come back every day, and that there is something new for them every day to keep pushing towards, to keep playing. I think it's very interesting to launch a game and be like, well, okay, game's done. You know, like, let's move on. I think what makes your game really interesting today is just how long can it live for? How long can you keep making sure that the players are happy and that there is something for them to come back to every day?
Wow, cool.
I'm just absorbing all this, John. I'm enjoying this immensely. Okay, I think I'll ask Dean, because he's been there, done that. Dean, are there any underserved markets in gaming left?
Yeah, I mean, I would point everybody just back to the mainstay market of AAA games, and I think there's this kind of a fiction out there about how they're too expensive to make now, and that, you know, they take 7 years, like say Red Dead Redemption 2 actually took that long, and you know, they took a team of 2,000 or so, and I think that people don't sort of always see the calculations that go into, you know, what comes out of making this. Like you could very well spend easily $150 million making one of these games, and some of them have budgets that go way up from there. And 5 years is the average for a brand new intellectual property, and it's getting longer. But I think that the part of the calculation that doesn't go in is that once they come out and they're successful, you know, they can add billions of dollars of market cap to a company and its value in the market and its reputation. And that answer just doesn't come from me. I mean, I got that answer in a conversation with an investment banker, and you know, you have all these you know, things that can spin out of a big game for merchandising, for other things as well. And so I think that you know, there's quick money in the game industry now, in many other parts of the game industry aside from that. But I don't think that means that people should neglect the highest part of the tentpole of the, you know, like the tentpole games. And so that's my view.
Nice, very nice. John, I'll throw this one your way. What's the most creative way to market a new game that you've seen in the last year?
Oh, in the last year, I mean, we touched on, you know, there was a kind of like metaverse sort of Robloxy example earlier on, and I mean, I'm pretty sure it was this year, but like when like Gucci launched their virtual collection with Roblox, the Gucci Garden experience, that apparently it just sold more pieces than like all physical stores that day. I found fascinating. But if I had to pick an ad, again, I don't know the timing, but the one that I just think is, I'm not sure what it is. It's like part ad, like it's a piece of art. It's like long form content. Is the kind of Halo 3 ads. It reminds me of this like apocalyptic sort of Pompeii. There's that almost like freeze frame the way it's shot. I'm sure there's the sort of social stunt element. I just think that's a beautiful ad. I mean, one of my all-time favorites. We were talking about this internally last week when we were just talking about just really, again, just take inspiration from what's been done and how we can do it better. Do you remember the Dead Space 2? Like, your mum hates Dead Space 2 ad? And again, it's just we think about influencers, right? And the way that you want influencers to then just experience your game in real time, and then people feed into that, for that emotion, exactly as Dave was talking about reviews. It's that sort of authentic glance in. I was watching that last week and showing that to the team on YouTube, but it still just makes me laugh. I don't know if it's real or fake, or if it's a fake focus group, but it's worth a watch on YouTube.
What's interesting here, John, is that we're all talking about experience. We've got emotional connection. We've got all this going on. But actually, we're still at a point in time where we're also talking about AR, right? And you have to ask yourself, honestly, is it a thing in gaming? Is it something that's going to be what we keep writing about, John, which is something amazing, big, going to augment our experience? Let's see. I have to ask Dave. He's the sci-fi man. AR, is it real, Dave?
Yeah, do you know what? I think so. AR and VR and MR and XR, I think is we're seeing some amazing things happen there. There's still a way to go. I'm kind of a believer in these new technologies. Like we were saying before with the site, but we also have a site called the Virtual Report, and I think there's stuff going on there with AR. Yeah, have we seen the best of it? I mean, there's some great experiences, obviously, like the kind of location-based AR. Jurassic World Alive is a perfect example. Pokemon Go for what that is. But also there's I've had some fantastic, really, really fun AR experiences using my iPhone. Things like Smash Tanks is great. Just being able to play kind of out there. I like some of the stuff they do with the Warhammer games as well, kind of bringing those characters to life. And I think there's something there. Have we seen absolutely the best of it yet? No. My gut is that the most kind of profitable AR experiences will first of all be productivity experiences. There'll be workplace experiences. I think the use of AR for training and that kind of thing probably. But I'm a believer in it. I want to see innovation in space like this. I think there's incredible, really interesting stuff going on. And even just in the last kind of 5 years since I had my first go on a Microsoft HoloLens in 2016, and even since then, the stuff that we're doing with AR and is incredible. Is it a thing? When you say is it a thing, do you mean is it kind of mainstream? No, I don't know that's the case. I know I don't think necessarily during the pandemic where my mom finally got into mobile gaming, where she was there playing. Is she getting into it? Probably not. But there are some great experiences there, and I think it's coming. So yeah, it's I think people should watch. Yeah, for sure.
I think also the area to watch is like Niantic and Pokemon Go, and they had a AR, experience within Pokemon Go, but I think a lot of people turned it off because it just chewed up your battery, right? But where they're going with their investments into both, software and hardware companies, and their alliance with Verizon on 5G, I think AR and 5G are going to be a pretty good combination, and I think that that's like an entry point for a lot of the players in the market. Like maybe Apple's waiting for that kind of opportunity as well. So I think it's a little too early to write it off, because the technology is still getting there to make it into a good experience.
Okay. Rose, I'd like to ask you one, because you were talking before about what goes through your mind when one of these gentlemen are reviewing your game, okay? So I'm going to keep with that, game success. What drives game success more, do you think? Is it big marketing budgets, or is it being the best game in your category, the best in class?
I mean, you can have the biggest budget, but if your game is not right, it does not matter. If you don't, if you can spend millions and millions of dollars acquiring users, but if they're not staying, that's just really a big waste. So being the best game and being the best game in the category is definitely going to be a much bigger driver than how much money you can put behind it. And I think you'll see that as well for a lot of the hyper casual games. Yes, you can put a bunch of money behind it, but really, if they like it, they will keep coming back. They'll tell their friends, they'll start climbing the charts, and then you'll just keep going and going and going and growing it more. So I think definitely being the best game. That's there's no budget if there's not a best game.
Love it. So product is the new marketing. I keep on hearing it.
Where have we heard that before?
Keep on hearing it.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to try something that's totally a test. And if it totally sucks, then nobody will ever hear it and we'll never see the light of day. But we're going to give it a shot. We're going to invent a new game live here with all you. Your big brains are needling and joking from the side. And we're going to just call you out and you've got to answer a quick question together, all together. I think we're going to build a game. So Rose, who are we targeting to play this game? What's our target audience?
Let's go with 18 to 35-year-old.
Okay.
Primarily female driven. And in a cartoony space.
Okay, so excellent. Dean, what kind of game are we making? Is it casual? Is it hyper casual? Is it mid-core? Is it AAA?
I think we're making a sort of a casual game that's very story driven.
Okay, very story driven. Love it. Who is our main character, John? Give us a main character or two.
I'm going to have to go with what I said about Luigi. It's going to have to be someone that is in the shadows, and the game is all about going on that journey with her, right, and evolving with her and building that emotional connection with her and everything that she's doing in the game. In my experience, those story-based games, that's where you get the best connection and retention when you've got that kind of lead character.
Wonderful, wonderful. So Rose, what's the goal of the game? What do you achieve when you win the game or you're playing it well?
I think if we're going with a narrative base, I think watching that character develop and finding out their backstory, and overcoming, several challenges that some challenging decisions to have that character growth. So I think it depends, going to be on where the narrative, what's the overreaching narrative? Is it they're trying to break into a job market? Are they on a quest? Are they on a quest to find themselves? I think, if they can find themselves at the end of it, who are they?
Love it.
I want to do that.
John, we're heading to you. How are we monetizing this game? Is it in-app purchase? Is it advertising? What is it?
Oh, come on. It's all about NFTs. That's what it's all about now.
We're monetizing with NFTs. Love it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Right.
Of course, we can't talk about IEP and rewarded video, but we've got to be very, very current. I feel that 25% of my inbox or approaches are about, John, have you thought about NFTs in your games? I have thought about it a lot. Look, joking aside, I think, again, to Dean's point, we're not making a AAA game, but of course you want a really healthy amount of IP in there to really drive that, that nice revenue, but also just really neatly integrated into the story as well with some nice upgrades and, unlocking additional content, or, maybe we're really brave and we do an IP deal as well. So we definitely need some IEP in there to pay for the IP deal. Yeah. But yeah, there would definitely be some lovely sort of custom NFTs in there that you can spend Ethereum.
Love it. Dave, what's our core loop? What's the key thing that our players are doing here, and how long is that core loop? Is that a 5-minute thing? Is it a longer thing?
No, let's keep it kind of short, I guess. Is this so I'm just trying to think. This is a narrative game, so we're not necessarily kind of doing it one-on-one. No, let's keep the core loop pretty short. Let's keep it. We wanted to sell these upgrades, so let's so it's maybe kind of card based. Going on what John said, we want to maybe we can pre-sell some NFT packs here where people are collecting stuff, so they can buy into those before the game's even released. So we're talking about something you can play there. So it's kind of it's a pretty short solitaire like experience with some kind of character based cards that they play pretty quickly. Let's give yeah, let's keep it to a couple of minutes to reach the end of that first call loop.
Nice. Love it. And Dave, sticking with you, how are we rewarding success? How are we keeping players engaged in the game? Are we sending out notifications to them? Are we giving them something? How are we keeping them engaged?
So we're going to have a real sense of, I think, progress here, like a kind of an explore kind of thing. But each loop here is going to take you from one level to another, and the levels are going to be kind of only accessible after a certain amount of time as well. So yeah, you're going to get notifications kind of going now that you can now proceed to the next level in this game, and you're going to. So it's a kind of, a lot of it is about exploration. We mentioned, so it's this woman's journey, isn't it? We said so she's going to go through various stages in her life, and we're going to need some content for that as she goes on every time, and that's how we're going to reward it.
Love it, love it. Dean, how complex is our game economy going to be? Is there going to be one thing that you want to get, whether that's gems or the NFTs, or are there going to be multiple things that you can get to help you get forward in the game?
Let's see. I'm gonna hijack the whole content here and say it's a choice-driven game, and you get two choices, and one is certain doom, and the other is certain doom. But you can buy the third choice with an NFT or something, and that'll get you out of it, and the story will keep going, right? Otherwise, the story's going to come and end in one of two ways, and you're just going to die. So
it's called "Give Us Your Money or the Game's Gone." User retention sucks, but monetization is super high.
People like choices, right?
People like choices. Sure they do. Paradox of choice. Rose, returning to you. Is this a social game? Do you have teams, or is it solo?
It'll be solo, but let's add in a geolock component. So you can have like side missions come on through when you're doing your daily tasks, on your, going to do your groceries or some errands, and whoop, here's a little notification about a little task because you're next to the mall.
Love it. Love it. And John, you have the hardest job of all. What is the name of the game?
What is the name of the game? Oh, wow. Yeah. You put me right on the spot, haven't you? So it's a casual narrative game.
I have a name for you if you want, so you can call it.
I'm just thinking for all that. Again, I had this conversation this morning of like ASO buzzwords. So what I'd like to get in there is like arcade with hang on, like if I could somehow get like merge arcade makeover something in there, that would really help my ASO team. And then I just need a protagonist name in there. So
here we go. I got the name for you. It's the Arcade Makeover Game of Life.
There you go.
I present to you the game that we have just invented. We are building a game for 18 to 35-year-old women. It will be a casual game. It's very story-driven. Our main character is someone in the shadows who's evolving, who has deep emotional challenges, which she is overcoming. And the goal is to help her overcome those challenges and grow her character. Perhaps as she graduates from school, perhaps graduate school, and moves into a job. We're monetizing this via NFTs, plus some upgrades and some in-app purchases, and maybe some pay for special IP. Our core loop is short. It's card-based. You get new collections, you get new NFTs, and you acquire stuff, which is going to help you in your emotional journey as you go. Keeping players engaged by exploring, making progress from one level to the next, and levels only become available at a certain time. You've got to do something, you've got to wait a certain time till the level becomes available, and then you've got to jump in while it's open. Our game economy isn't super complex, but if you make the wrong choice, you die and the game deletes itself automatically. You can buy a third choice when you're faced with a quandary, and that is your choice to continue to live. It's a solo game, but it has geo-relevant missions, side missions based on where you are, whether you're in the store, you're at school, you're at work, and we are calling it the Arcade Makeover Game of Life. Great job, everybody.
That is awesome. John, I think you're
good.
the
Who's
Don
building
Draper.
that? John, are you making that game?
That was an incredible summary. Are you reading something?
Yeah. I was gonna say, John, you're like the Don Draper of games development. Bringing it all together. I don't know what I'm listening to.
It's all the team.
Just music.
It's all the team. Guys, we have literally minutes left. We have to jump out. 30 seconds for each of you. Your top tip for game marketers. What should they do or not do? And we're going to start with the game marketers. 30 seconds. We're going to turn then to the journalist. Rose, you're on first. Your top tip.
Know your market. Know what they want and be ready to give them what they want.
Well, that's the easy part, right? I mean, everybody knows what the market wants. I mean, I'm just joking.
Totally.
John, your top tip.
Hire creative geniuses. I just think with everything going on around privacy, I don't think there's a time where your creative has ever had to work harder to like better find, identify, and convert your audience. So hire brilliant creative people.
Love it, love it, love it. And Dean, your top tip.
There are 7 days in a week and 24 hours in a day, and you do not have to send an embargo for Tuesday at 6 a.m. Pacific time.
Oh, this is something that is near and dear to Dean's heart. I love it. It can only be 9 a.m. Dave, we'll turn to you. You have last hits, my friend. What is your top tip for game marketers?
Do you know, I'm gonna say it's time related as well. I think that one of the things I would say to studios working on games is to give us plenty of time, and I'm speaking on behalf of the press here with the game. Tell us far in advance, give us plenty of time with the game, get in touch way ahead of release. It's the bane of my life that someone gets in touch and says, "Hey, I'm just announcing this game's out now." Well, someone's got to play that now and write about it. You know, why couldn't you have told us that before? Happens more in mobile than it does in kind of AAA console. But yeah, you've got a new mobile game. Give us plenty of time on that. Let's have it in advance.
Dave, here's what you don't understand. You have the press release. You have everything you need to write the story.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Excellent. I want to thank you all. Rose, you are always amazing. John, thank you so much. Dave and Dean, we know you guys are super busy. Dean, sorry, it's going to be an 8-story day today. You know, you can't do 10. You spent an hour with us. You wasted your time. I apologize. Thank you so much, everybody. You've been amazing.
Thank you, Pat. Appreciate it.
Thank you.